Womb to Womb, a podcast dedicated to energetic and shamanic womb healing, manifesting sacred relationships, and embodying our golden age blueprint, with your host, Diana Beaulieu. Hello and welcome to the Womb to Womb podcast series. I'm Diana Beaulieu, your host, the founder of Sacred Women Awakening, and I'm a womb awakening mentor and modern medicine woman. I'm very happy to welcome you into this episode where I'm going to be talking about the connection between feminine trauma, soul loss, and what I call the distorted feminine archetype, and different ways that that can show up in relationship to men and to others, and how we can address this in order to come back into our full and flourishing femininity. So I'd like to first talk about how one of the most beautiful insights that shamanic medicine brings us is the idea that when we experience a trauma, big or small, we might go into a space of losing energy fragments. So it's as though trauma is like an impact which is physical, and it causes us to lose or fragment parts of our energy. So trauma, of course, takes different forms. We have physical traumas like car accidents, but we also have emotional traumas like breakups or arguments or being verbally or emotionally abused. And we even have energetic traumas such as psychic attacks. Now, we can think of all of these attacks as having an impactful element where there is a point in which something is going into our system. In the case of a car accident, we're having a physical injury. In the case of an emotional blow up, an argument, a breakup, we go through some sort of emotional injury. And at the more subtle levels, usually in the case of any kind of trauma, and then of course including spiritual traumas, we may also start to lose pieces of our energy body. And this is a kind of invisible wound that I call soul loss. And it's a very recognized wound in shamanic medicine in many cultures, where the energy body that's previously been very crystalline and clear and full somehow shatters and pieces of us disappear. Of course, this can happen at the level of the womb. So the womb is a physical organ. She's also an emotional space, and she is absolutely a space and container of consciousness and energy. And what happens in the case of many different kinds of trauma is the womb also starts to fragment and lose her energy. So we end up with, in a way, what we might call an empty womb, a womb that's physically present, a womb that is apparently healthy, but also then has lost her vital force and fragments of her own energy. And this is what I call the root cause of the distorted feminine in different guises. And the distorted feminine is an archetype where a woman is actually led by her inner emptiness to go into different aspects of trying to draw energy back to compensate for the energy that she's lost. It might be in the womb, it might be in other parts of her body, it might be in her heart, it might be in other organs. And this distorted feminine archetype is very much concerned with bringing back or calling in or taking or manipulating others so that energy from others, life force from others might be drawn into her as a way for her to experience life force that's missing in herself. Now, of course, this isn't the cure. The only way that we can really cure soul loss and this fragmentation and the distorted feminine is actually by doing soul retrieval, which is something that I teach a lot about in my practitioner trainings. However, it's important to understand different dynamics that can take place when we have this distorted feminine mechanism in place. And one of those is what I call the hungry feminine. So the hungry feminine is trying to fill the space of her womb that has been blown open, that has been subject to this soul loss and this soul shattering. So that soul shattering for her has also meant that she has lost vital aspects of her sexual energy, her creative life force, perhaps aspects of her self-esteem. And one of the things that she will do through the space of her womb is actually steal the sexual and life force energy of others. In the case of a heterosexual relationship, the most obvious candidate for this kind of energy stealing will be the partner, the male partner. It may also happen in homosexual and in transsexual relationships also. So what is happening is that the one who feels hungry, the one who feels empty and shattered, will on a subtle level be taking life force energy at a sexual level from the hara or the womb space of the other. And what this means over time is that the other is being slowly siphoned and therefore disempowered. And what that might look like in the relationship is a gradual but encroaching sense of imbalance in even energy levels, physical energy levels, or a sense of power or creative capacity. And it may also mean that the other, the partner, let's say in this case it's a man, might be also experiencing a gradual diminishment of their own sexual energy. This might happen more quickly or more slowly, depending on how voracious the pattern within the woman, the hungry woman with a hungry womb, is of taking in and really sort of like kidnapping this life force and keeping it within. There's another aspect to this which is very interesting. So when we're talking about the hungry feminine archetype, we're really talking about simply an attempt to feed yourself, an attempt to fill yourself with others' energy, which is a very common pattern that we see in relationship dynamics once we get into this energetic and this shamanic level of being able to sense and perceive what is going on. However, there is this added twist to the dynamic, which is that sometimes the hungry feminine is also afraid of the powerful other. In this case, let's say it's the masculine. So not only is the deep root cause of taking the energy of the other, the sexual, the creative, the power energy of the other, the need to feed, as it were, but it also comes from another distortion, which is using this mechanism to actually weaken the male, the masculine in this case, so that they're less of a threat. So I discovered this mechanism in myself, and I realized how it operates in the collective, because we've had this long period of patriarchy in many, many instances where women have been in relationships with men and experienced an enormous power imbalance where the man has just huge, disproportionate amounts of power physically, politically, economically, and even emotionally over the woman. And so this aspect of disempowering the male through soul stealing of his sexual energy, which might also then impact into his physical energy, his emotional energy, and his power, his personal power, is also then an attempt to actually redress the balance and, let's say, weaken the enemy, weaken the one who is a threat. So this dynamic can be very insidious, and it can be an unconscious dynamic that is happening from even past lives and ancestral patterns, even when one is in a relationship that is currently safe and balanced and harmonious. So I'm talking about dynamics of soul stealing from the feminine, the wounded and empty feminine, to the other. These dynamics are very erosive to relationship, and sometimes they could be mistaken for a lessening of sexual polarity between the partners. Perhaps they could be mistaken for we're just drifting apart. Perhaps they could be mistaken for the man is becoming, or the other is becoming, rather pathetic, and he's less and less attractive, and he's somehow collapsing in on himself. However, the mechanism that he's actually being siphoned continuously, and often specifically through the sexual act, is unknown. So there are relationship dynamics that on a psychological level are trying to be explained, and yet this deeper sense of what is happening is going unnoticed, which is why for me shamanic and energy medicine is so powerful and so useful, because we can quickly redress these kind of patterns. What I want to do now is talk a little bit about, well, what is the way that we can fix this? We've talked about the problem, we've talked a little bit about how it might be detected in a relationship, and I would invite you also listening to this to reflect on, have I been or am I in a relationship? If I'm a woman with a man, have I been in a relationship where I've sensed that the power and the potency of the man has diminished over time, and perhaps I've just taken that for granted? Can I feel that I have a fear of men? Can I feel that I have an inner emptiness in myself that I'm trying to fill, and it may not always be with the energy of other people. It might be with food or with gambling addictions or with alcohol or with shopping, with many other things. And if that is the case, then what we can do about this is really first work to consciously clear within ourselves this pattern of soul stealing, energy stealing. And really the ultimate medicine for this is to do soul retrieval work, to identify points of trauma in our lifetimes, also in other lifetimes, or even on the ancestral line, which have caused this sense of shattering in the womb and in other parts of the body, and to call back our own energy. Because really, essentially, the only thing that nourishes us fully and fills us fully and empowers us fully is our own energy. And when we do soul medicine like this, we start to fill up on our own energy. Now, this may be a very, very quick process. It may be very dramatic, or it may take time, and it may take a lifetime, in fact, to really fill ourselves completely. But what we start doing is we start releasing this impulse to take energy from others because we're starting to feel more and more full in ourselves. However, at the same time, we may also need to identify parts of us, our unconscious, that are actually in the position of the soul stealer. So perhaps there are unconscious energetic mechanisms within the womb that are acting like vacuum cleaners, and during the sexual act of vacuum cleaning energy out of the male and into ourselves. Masculine sexual energy is very giving in its pure and divine nature, and it is easy to take it. We might also need to identify parts of ourselves that have a deep fear of men or the patriarchy and are looking to weaken the enemy. And all of this unconscious work also can happen shamanically. So I can't really go into that much depth about how we would heal this for each individual client, because each individual client and each individual woman and man are going to have their own journey in terms of this kind of work. But I just wanted to share this really important dynamic so that you can have a chance to think about it and to reflect on whether it feels to be real in your own life. And I encourage you to engage in womb awakening and healing work and shamanic healing work if you feel that you have relationship dynamics of this kind and that you would like to really heal them and bring back this equality of balance of power, where there is no sense of needing to steal the energy of others sexually, either because of a hunger and an emptiness, or also because of an accompanying sense of wishing to disempower the other. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and you can find out more about my work at www.sacredwomanawakening.com, where you can see my practitioner trainings and also my online courses, which also speak to these themes. Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe. For more podcasts, blog articles, free masterclasses, and womb practitioner certification courses, go to www.sacredwomanawakening.com.